the Age of Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. From 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Vision radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear.
Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. Thank you for joining us. Today is May 21st, 2018. It's 8 o'clock in the morning here on UCY.TV. And we really appreciate everybody who is tuning in. And I want to thank KEPW listeners also for joining us. I know that this show is played, I think, at 10 or 11 o'clock in Eugene at night, that is, on KEPW.org. And I want to thank you for all of that. Today we had scheduled with us one of the directors of KEPW, John Abbey, and he had something come up and could not be with us. So I'm going to do what we had planned on talking about because there is a new documentary out called All Governments Lie by Jeff Cohen. I know that sounds like to me, when I heard the title, it sounded like the punchline to a stand-up comedy joke. Like, really, tell us something we don't know. All governments lie, duh. Truth, Deception in the Spirit of I.F. Stone. Okay, so it's a team of Emmy award-winning filmmakers. And I don't know about I.F. Stone. There's some dodgy things about him, but I think that he did make an effort. So, you know, people have all been compromised within our system. I think if you get anywhere in the system, you can't really get away from that. So I thought I'd just share with you this event that's going on. There are, the reason that we're talking about this, All Governments Lie, is this is why. It relates to KEPW. The nationally known journalist Jeff Cohen brings his new film to Oregon this week, All Governments Lie, Truth, Deception, and the Spirit of I.F. Stone. A team of award-winning filmmakers who subscribed to I.F. Stone's newsletter in their teens created the theatrical documentary. In Eugene on Wednesday, May 23rd, Jeff Cohen will attend a meet-and-greet reception at Cafe Soraya from 5 to 7 p.m. All the donations go to KEPW Radio 97.3 FM. That's here in Eugene, Oregon. But you can listen to them on KEPW.org. online, and I actually recommend it. It's actually a great radio station. It plays local news, local music, local talk shows that are pertinent to local issues, but also the grander scale of issues that, you know, track every single community that we have going on now. And then he will also be here in town Thursday, May 24th at 6 p.m. in Circle Films presents All Governments Lied, followed by a group discussion with Jeff at the Bijou Theater, 492 East 13th Avenue. And the Bijou, for those of you who don't live in Eugene, used to be an old Catholic church. So it's super cool. It's not just like a movie theater. It's like big, tall ceilings, and it was a church. It was the old church here. So it's an interesting place. To me, it feels haunted. I'm going to tell you that. Monday, May 28th, that's next Monday. Join us for a meet and greet with dinner for Jeff Cohen at Mozzie's Italian Restaurant, 3377 East Amazon Drive from 5 to 9. Use a voucher and Mozzie's will donate 30% of your purchase to KEPW. You can print a page of the mini vouchers online at www.kepw.org. And it's right on the front page. You scroll down and there's a voucher you can print out and share your meal and support KEPW. That is why we decided to have John Abbey on the show, because he was all involved in getting this going on. But something happened with John over the weekend and he was not able to be with us today. So I decided I'm still going to do it, although I don't know that much about it. So what I did, I'm going to use a little Jerome trick. I got their website. I went to allgovernmentslie.com about the film. So let me read to you what it says, because it sounds that is way underrepresenting how great this sounds. Independent journalists Jeremy Scahill, Glenn Greenwald, Michael Moore expose government lies and corporate deception inspired by the legendary investigative journalist I.F. Stone. All Governments Lie, Truth, Deception, and the Spirit of I.F. Stone is a theatrical documentary created by a team of award-winning filmmakers who subscribed to I.F. Stone's newsletter in their teens. I.F. Stone's Weekly inspired us then and compels us now to tell the story of a new wave of independent, investigative, adversarial journalists following in Stone's footsteps. Really, where are they in terms of stopping the nuclear monsters? I'd really love to have them step in. Maybe I should contact Michael Moore and say, what about the poison? Forget the economy. What about the poison? We hope this film will inspire the next generation of independent journalists, many of whom are now in college, to carry on I.F. Stone's legacy of speaking truth to power. Maybe I should change my major to journalism, because I'm definitely likely going to change it from political science, because I think if I go back to college, I'll be spitting nails again. Them telling me that nuclear weapons keeps the world safe and geoengineering trails up there are the solution to climate change. I thought I was going to spit nails these last couple of years. This film will change the way you look at mainstream media, or MSM. That's funny that they did that. Giant media conglomerates are increasingly reluctant to investigate and criticize government policies, particularly on defense, security, and intelligence issues. Don't you just love this? We are now living in 1984, where people who are anti-fascists, I guess that's how they would claim themselves, or anti-oligarchies, right down here, particularly on defense, security, and intelligence issues, writing that as if they're saying, here, eat a piece of broccoli, telling a little kid who hates broccoli, just eat this. Defense, security, and intelligence issues. Because whatever those are is completely the opposite of what they are. Okay, back to this. I beg your pardon. I think I definitely need to go see this film, for sure. They are ceding responsibility for holding governments and corporations accountable to the independent journalists and filmmakers who risk their careers, their freedom, and their lives in war zones to expose the truth. That is for sure. We have lost more journalists. Really, it is so sad, since the traitor that's in the White House stole the election and got in. With government deception rampant, and the intrusion of state surveillance into private life never more egregious, independent voices like Glenn Greenwald, Jeremy Scahill, and Amy Goodman are crucially important. All three are inspired by the iconoclastic rebel journalist named I.F. Stone, whose fearless independent reporting from 1953 to 1971 filled a tiny 4-page newsletter which he wrote, published, and carried to the mailbox every week. Wow. Stone is little known today, but All Governments Lie will reveal the profound influence he's had on contemporary independent journalists like Greenwald, Scahill, Goodman, and others. So I am going to play this little trailer. It's 2 minutes, and I believe it will work. So if it's let's see, how long did it say it is? It is, I think it's 2 minutes and 36 seconds. So I'm going to play it.
Every statement I make today is backed up by sources, solid sources. These are not assertions. What we're giving you are facts and conclusions based on solid intelligence.
When is the last time you heard CNN say the Pentagon is lying?
You know, we don't have state media in the United States, but if we had it, how would it be any different?
I think the media is really nihilistic. It's about making money. What makes money in this country happens to be avoiding difficult truths.
That's Matt Taibbi.
Thousands and thousands of people were cheering as that building was coming down.
You have to get rid of this ignorant and meddlesome majority, control them, make sure they do the right things, all for their own good, incidentally.
Congresswoman, let me interrupt you just for a moment. We've got some breaking news out of Miami. Justin Bieber has been arrested on a number of charges.
Good journalism today has the state in its crosshairs, and you never want to punch down. You always want to punch up.
I would say our mission statement is to produce adversarial, fearless journalism. The more power someone wields, the more journalistic accountability and scrutiny they need.
There are policies that have been enacted. There are bombs that have been dropped, as a consequence of which these millions of people are destitute in the way that they are. And we have to allow them to tell that story.
There's only two types of reporters. There's those who care and
Chris
those who
Hedges, who is coming to Eugene in May.
I'm amused
this
at
June, I
people
think.
who claim that the governments don't lie. Really? You know human beings that never lie? Of course they lie!
I tried to prove what I was saying from the horse's mouth, as it were.
This is I.F.
The
Stone.
government's own documents.
I can draw a line from I.F. Stone directly to what I'm doing now.
That's Michael Moore.
I thought, how could the President of the United States be involved in something this dumb at the beginning?
That's Carl Bernstein.
We're being dumbed down, we're being watered down, and we're being told information which is false.
John Carlos Frey.
These people own this shit.
When the media acts as a conveyor belt for the lies, why it matters is because lies take lives.
I find in our own government documents nothing but lies.
Wow. Well, that's going to be quite a film, you guys. So that's going to be interesting. That's coming here, and it's actually making its way up and down the West Coast. So I think it's going to be in Portland soon. So, I think these are really important, and I hope that I am going to go to all of those events because I'm part of KEPW. Our show airs on their station, so I'm considered a producer, and they'd like me to attend all these things, and I want to go. And I have every intention of asking this gentleman, why is it that the mainstream journalists, the so-called freedom fighters, are not fighting for our environmental freedom? Why they are not acknowledging that Fukushima is a disaster and that nobody should be going there. It's highly contaminated with radioactivity right now. It is really literally, I'm on Instagram and I follow some Cirque du Soleil circus performers, them and their little family. I forget his name, Churakenko or something like that, but he's Russian. And right now, the Cirque du Soleil is in Japan, in Tokyo, and it is so sad. They have like a little 7-year-old girl, and they all work in the circus, and they're all eating the fish, eating the sushi, enjoying Japanese life as if Fukushima never happened, as if Fukushima is stopped. I mean, that's the shocking part of it. People act like Fukushima has been resolved. Fukushima is far from resolved. There should be a 50-mile diameter around there where nobody goes, period. 50 miles, not 7 like there is now. That's the sad part, 7 miles. The Japanese government is saying it's perfectly fine. So when I go to see Mr. Jeff Cohen, when we went these meet and greets, I'm bringing information for these people because obviously they don't get how important this is. And, it's not just, we have Hanford, so we're all contaminated. Hanford is not spewing out the levels of radioactivity. You can go to Hanford and the Geiger counter is not at 2.3, 2.0, 3.6. I mean, we are not hearing about it because of the secrecy laws in Japan. But there is a dire crisis there that they are ignoring that is going to catch up on them in about 10 years when all of a sudden, boom, because we're 8 years on. So between 10 years and 20 years is when the symptoms of being exposed to radioactivity begin to really present themselves. And it probably already is in the children, which we're not hearing about, and it probably already is in the birth rates, which we are hearing about. It's unprecedented, and they're actually shaming the people. So I can't wait to talk to Jeff Cohen and ask him, all these things they're talking about, war, and look at these. Let's go back to this. Defense, security, and intelligence issues to investigate or criticize government policies. First off, how do we let them get away with calling it defense, security, and intelligence issues? That's where I split a gut when I was reading this. Because it is not security that they're giving us. They're giving us insecurity. Everybody in our country is freaking nervous that the government is spying on them or that they're being attacked by some foreign agent or by their neighbor. So we don't have security. We have boxes. In fact, I saw a box be put up on the telephone pole outside my own window that directly looked into my office. So that's security, huh? It is not security. Defense is not defense. We're not defending anything. We are aggressors on the planet, which is why the Europeans have recently said, guess what? We don't think we can trust you. How stupid was Trump to go into North Korea to get out of the Iran deal before he cinched a deal with North Korea? As if North Korea would even trust anything he says now. It's ridiculous. Talk about upsetting the apple cart, And somebody said, well, maybe that's a good thing because then we see it all. We expose it all. Well, you know what? We have been exposing it all. This is one of my conversations with anti-nuke activists and with peace activists is, okay, so you've been doing it for 25 years. What's it getting us? Where are we going with this? I mean, when are we going to call to arms or what do we got to do to make this stuff stop? I mean, we're all ceding responsibility. This is what it says. They are ceding responsibility for holding governments and corporations accountable to the independent journalists and filmmakers who risk their lives, freedom, and their lives in war zones to expose the truth. And this is the sad part. It's not just the war zones. It's if you talk and say the wrong thing, you don't get on mainstream media. You don't have a career. These guys, they started The Intercept because The Intercept, which I highly recommend, because those people couldn't get on mainstream media or very infrequently. They might get 2 minutes on MSNBC, but you don't see Naomi Klein, you don't see Jeremy Scahill as consultants and, talk show hosts and talking about what they believe, Glenn Greenwald talking about, the whole calamity of what's happening in our government right now, because they want to talk about the bigger picture. But I don't know. I mean, to me, there is always a level of collusion at every level here. Jeremy Scahill, Glenn Greenwald, Michael Moore have said nothing about Fukushima. For real. I mean, where is Michael Moore's movie about Flint, Michigan's water and the children that are freaking dying and getting mentally ill now and having all kinds of diseases? I mean, this is handicapping people, what's going on. We're ignoring the big elephant in the room, talking about the corruption and their war games and their intelligence issues. That's the other one. Intelligence issues, security and intelligence issues. That just means they're spying on us. It's not intelligence. That intelligence is like what do they call that? It's not an acronym, but it's, it's a way to make it sound good. That's all. It's not intelligence. It's spying. They are spying on us. We do not have freedom, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So it is up to us. And this is why I'm very excited about being engaged with KEPW.org. And I feel very blessed in a way to be living in Eugene, Oregon, because this station is one of 18 that was granted in 2016. Only one of 18 since the late 70s. Or the late 80s. They have not given out FM stations for a long time. And then there was a class action lawsuit against the, let me turn off my thing if I can get it. There was a class action lawsuit against people, and it ended up so that they forced them to give out 18 of them, at least 18 of them. And so they did, and KEPW made an effort to get one, and they won. And now we have it. And so it's kind of cool. And the radio station is actually a good radio station. It has a variety of music. In the morning, I think it plays the usual NPR type things, but the afternoons and the early evenings, they play local musicians and local talk shows, like they host our show. They have a show about homeless issues, about helping the homeless people. They reach out to communities that are usually ignored. So that's a good thing. And they let us talk about the real facts, the facts that we are killing our planet and that we still have a horrible thing going on with Fukushima. I mean, honestly, I don't mean to be a one-trick pony, as they call it, but listen to this. What was the date on this article that I found? 4/27/2018. Fukushima's other big problem: 1 million tons of radioactive water. That's a big problem for all of us, and this is from Wired.com. I'm going to read it. The tsunami-driven seawater that engulfed Japan's Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant has long receded, but plant officials are still struggling to cope with another dangerous flood. The enormous amounts of radioactive water that crippled the facility each day. The enormous amounts of radioactive water the crippled facility generates each day. Oh my gosh. More than 1 million tons of radioactive laced water is already being kept on site in an ever-expanding forest of hundreds of hulking steel tanks, and so far there is no plan to deal with them. I had read that the government had allowed them to dump that water, that was what the Japanese diet had agreed on. The earthquake and tsunami that hammered Fukushima on March 11, 2011, triggered meltdown on 3 of its 6 reactors. That left messes of intensely radioactive fuel somewhere loose in the reactor buildings, although no one knows exactly where. What is known, however, is that every day as much as 150 tons of radioactive groundwater percolates into the reactors through cracks in their foundations, becoming contaminated with radioactive isotopes in the process. To keep that water from leaking into the ground or the Pacific, TEPCO, the utility giant that owns the plant, pumps it out and runs it through a massive filtering system housed in a building the size of a small aircraft hangar. Inside are arrays of 7-foot-tall stainless steel tubes filled with sand grain-like particles that perform a process called ion exchange. The particles grab onto the ions of cesium, strontium, and other dangerous isotopes in the water, making room for them by spitting out sodium. The highly toxic sludge created as a byproduct is stored elsewhere on site in thousands of sealed containers. This technology has improved since the catastrophe. The first filtering systems, installed just weeks after the disaster by California-based Curion Inc., which has since been bought by Veolia, a French resource management company, only caught cesium, a strong gamma radiation emitter that makes it the most dangerous of the isotopes in the water. The tubes of those arrays were filled with highly modified grains of naturally occurring volcanic minerals called zeolites. By 2013, the company developed entirely artificial particles, a form of titanosilicate, that also grabs strontium. The filters, however, don't catch tritium, a radioactive isotope of hydrogen. That's a much trickier task. Cesium and strontium atoms go into the solution with the water, like sugar in tea, but tritium can bond with oxygen just like regular hydrogen, rendering the water molecules themselves radioactive. It's one thing to separate cesium from water, but how do you separate water from water? Asked John Raymond, Curion's founder and now president of Veola's Nuclear Solutions Group. The company claims to have developed a system that can do just that job, but TEPCO has so far balked at the multi-billion-dollar cost. Oh my God, I hate these people. So for now, the tritiated water is pumped into a steadily growing up collection of tanks. There are already hundreds of them, and TEPCO has to start building a new one every 4 days. TEPCO has at least reduced the water's inflow. As much as 400 tons per day was gushing in just a couple of years ago. In an effort to keep the groundwater from getting in, TEPCO has built a network of pumps, and in 2016 installed an underground ice wall, a $300 million subterranean fence of 30-yard long rods through which tons of sub-zero brine is pumped, freezing the surrounding earth, all of which helps but hasn't solved the problem. I want to read that again. I'm sorry, you guys. In an effort to keep the groundwater from getting in, TEPCO has built a network of pumps and in 2016 installed an underground ice wall. That ice wall is a complete farce. It did not work. A $300 million subterranean fence of 30-yard long rods through which tons of sub-zero brine is pumped, freezing the surrounding earth, all of which helps but hasn't solved the problem. It didn't solve the problem, goofball, because it didn't work. It made the foundations of the building. It didn't freeze. It was too radioactive. So you should tell that part of the problem. It did not help. It began to make things worse. Tritium is far less dangerous than cesium. It emits weaker, lower energy form of radiation. Still, all of that tritiated water can't be stored indefinitely. Some of those tanks and pipes will eventually fail. It's inevitable, said Dale Klein, former head of the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, who has been consulting with TEPCO since the early days following the disaster. Oh, no wonder it's a complete wreck. They have the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission consulting with them. Oh, for goodness sakes. They wouldn't know what to do if you showed them the way. Oh, Lord. Wow. Okay, so, back to the story, okay? Klein, among others, believes that the concentrations of tritium are low enough that the water can be safely released into the sea. They should dilute it and dispose of it, he says. It would be better to have a controlled release than an accidental one. Oh, Lord. I mean, do they not get what they're talking about by saying this? They have no idea how to stop this, but they want to just dilute it and keep putting it in. At some point, there's nothing to dilute. But the notion of dumping tons of radioactive water into the ocean is understandably a tough sell, you think? Whatever faith the Japanese public had left in TEPCO took a further beating in the first couple of years after the meltdowns, when several investigations forced the company to acknowledge they had underreported the amount of radiation released during and after the disaster. Japan's fishing industry raised a ruckus whenever the idea of dumping the treated water is broached. They already have to contend with import restrictions imposed by neighboring countries worried about eating contaminated fish. Japan's neighbors, China, Korea, and Taiwan, have also objected. For now, all TEPCO can do is keep building tanks and hope that someone comes up with a solution before they run out of room or the next earthquake hits. Lord, I don't know about you, but this is outrageous. They should tell Japan's fishing industry that they don't have an industry anymore. This is outrageous that we even have a fishing industry, which we don't. The fish are disappearing. It's outrageous. Oh man, you guys, we're in this is the thing. We're in this place where, I always adhere to this idea that it's darkest before the dawn. So I'm waiting for the dawn. I'm counting on the dawn happening here sometime soon, because listen to this. I thought, okay, when I realized this morning that John Abbey was not going to be able to join us, I thought, well, I'm going to continue with this idea, and I'm sure I'm not talking about anything of the things that John could expound on, because he knows a whole different set of information. So I thought I'd go to the nuclear alerts, right? So today, current event notification report for May 21st, 2018. There are two. One by Louisiana Radiation Protection Division. It's a non-emergency. What happened here? Stuck processor gauge shutter. That's always what happens, right? These things are built to break, or that's what I've been told. Or that they break frequently because they're exposed to radioactivity. So that's normal. And then the second thing is Columbia Generating Station, current power at 0. This event happened on 5/18. It has not been updated. It's 5/21. RPS actuation is critical. Automatic reactor scram caused by main transformer trip. At 6:51 PDT on May 18th, Columbia Generating Station experienced a main transformer trip that caused the reactor scram. Reactor power, pressure, and level were maintained as expected for this condition. MSRV-1A, safety relief valve, and MSRV-1B, safety relief valve, opened on reactor high pressure during the initial transient. MSRV-1B appeared to remain open after pressure lowered below the reset point. The operating crew removed power supply fuses for MSRV-1B, and it currently indicates intermediate position. SRV, safety relief valve, tailpipe temperatures indicate all valves are closed. Suppression pool level and temperature have remained steady within normal operating levels. All control rods inserted and power reactor power is maintained subcritical. Reactor pressure vessel water level is being maintained with condensate and feed system with startup flow control valves in automatic. Reactor pressure is being maintained with the turbine bypass valves controlling in automatic. The main condenser is in heat sink. No ECCS, emergency core cooling systems, actuated or injected. The end of cycle recirculation pump trip and the reactor protection systems actuated, causing a trip to the RRC pumps and reactor scram. So that's what happened. That's at least what they're saying. That's their story, and they're sticking with it. Well, this comes on the heels of this week. I have an appointment. Louisa Hamachek, Jana Thrift, Jerome Hebert. I hope that he'll be able to join us. His schedule will allow. We have an appointment on Wednesday. We're going to go to see our federal official, Peter DeFazio. We're all going to bring information about the urgency of closing the Columbia Generating Station. For this very reason, let us say that something, right now there's zero current power going on. It's in hot shutdown. That's its current RX mode. Hot shutdown. Operation mode is 0. Initial power was 100%. Now it's at 0 power, and it's considered in a hot shutdown. Now let's say something like an earthquake happened here on the west coast to the range of 7 or 6.2. A strong earthquake, but not something that would cause everything to break. It rumbles for 30 seconds, and we just have a strong earthquake. This Columbia Generating Station is a very, very weak plant, obviously. It goes into these scrams all the time. RPS actuation is considered critical. It's in a critical position. It's at 0 power. They have it in hot shutdown right now. There has not been a new report since the 18th. And this came out. The event was reported on the 18th. That was Friday. So they put it out today. So let's watch this tomorrow to see if this is now, if it's back up and running, or what they tell the NRC. We could go to their website and look, but I wonder what they're going to tell the NRC. This is why we're going to see Peter DeFazio's office. We're going to make an appointment to see Ron Wyden, and we're going to make an appointment to see Jeff Merkley. And we're going to talk to our federal officials, and we're going to bring them newspaper articles and information that explains what we're dealing with the Columbia Generating Station is a proximity issue. It is way too close to Hanford to be operating the way it's operating. It just got relicensed for another 40 years. So the NRC said, yeah, you can run it for 80 years total. Don't worry about it. That's what this movie is about. All governments lie. That's the thing. I am very excited to see what they're going to be talking about. Because with government deception rampant and the intrusion of state surveillance into private life, that is really where we're at. It is really very egregious right now. It is beyond egregious. And these journalists, Glenn Greenwald, Jeremy Scahill, Amy Goodman, even Roger Moore, they do speak truth to power. And that's what we need. We do need people to speak up. And it's kind of like I ran into someone that I'm hoping that I can interview over the weekend while I was at the market handing out flyers for this event for KEPW. And I hope that we can get him on. We were talking about, he doesn't really dig I.F. Stone, right? Well, me either, because to me, I.F. Stone was somewhat complicit. I don't remember the details of why he ran against my craw, but I remember thinking that he was complicit, and I've sort of forgotten that memory. I mean, I'm 63, and when all of these events were going on, a lot of things that were happening, I was really young, like 17, 18 years old, and I remember Watergate, and I watched all the Watergate hearings. And frankly, it was the Republicans that saved our country. Unlike today, the Republicans of today have just swallowed the freaking Kool-Aid. But we also did not have the Fox network news brainwashing them. I mean, it is egregious, the lies that is coming out on that television station. I wake up often, I would say twice a week at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'll just turn it on for a minute because I want to hear what the President of the United States is listening to at 6 o'clock in the morning, because that's what they say he's listening to. He doesn't read his daily briefings, but he listens to Fox News. And that is dangerous because they lie. They will straight up lie. We really have been taken over. And the fact that we have Fukushima going on and people don't want to talk about it is just incomprehensible. Or Hanford. Hanford is not taken care of, folks. And the Columbia Generating Station ought not to be less than 20 miles away from it. Because when we have an earthquake, we're ringing the bell before an emergency happens here. And for everyone living on the Northwest, here up in the Northwest, that needs to be our mission. And unfortunately, Washington State is very pro-nuclear. They get billions of dollars into their state because of it. And that's what this movie is about. All governments lie. They are lying about radioactivity not being harmful. Completely, they are lying about that. I don't know if any of you have read Poison Power. Poison Power was written by John Goffman and Arthur R. Tamplin. And it's the subtitle is called The Case Against Nuclear Power Plants. The original plan to build the nuclear power plants in the beginning, they wanted hundreds of power plants. I mean, they wanted a lot of nuclear power plants that were planned. They wanted them not only at Indian Point, they wanted them in Georgia and Pennsylvania, Florida, Tennessee, Iowa, I mean, everywhere. And they actually did put them all over the place, to be honest. But they wanted 3 times as many nuclear power plants. Okay, so I just randomly opened the book, and it said, the title of this chapter is called, Must We Hold Out for Cold Corpses? Here, let me go here. And I am going to go a page back, because he's starting to talk about Linus Pauling. Linus Pauling did a lot of work. Now let us see whether the approach using the experimental animal evidence would have misled us or would have provided very sound evidence. Okay, so this is a very interesting thing. In this chapter, he's talking about how in the nuclear industry, they do not allow, the scientists do not allow you to make a comparison between what happens to animals and what happens to humans. It's a peculiar thing. Although they do study animals, their conclusion always says that we can't make that comparison to human beings because we're so genetically different. So this is kind of like the lying of the government, the way that they do this at the very beginning. Now he's talking about this. By now, to our sorrow, human evidence is available for all major forms of cancer and leukemia induced by ionizing radiation. Whatever the results are for the few remaining minor forms of cancer, they cannot alter the picture significantly. Further, extensive evidence shows a 2% increase in cancer per rad of exposure in young adults. Again, using our 30-year-old person as representative, with 5 rads accumulated at the allowable annual exposure, we have 5 times 2, or a 10% increase in cancer plus leukemia expected. The 10% of 320,000 is 32,000 extra deaths from cancer plus leukemia annually are to be expected if the population receives the allowable 0.17 rad per year. 32,000 cancers every year, folks. Independently, Professor Linus Pauling estimates 96,000 extra cancers plus leukemia deaths annually. Comparing these estimates, 32,000 to 96,000 extra deaths annually, with the 80,000 that would have arrived at the same experimental animal data, we realize immediately that the animal data would have provided sound guidance. Moreover, the animal data would not have at all been super conservative, for the human evidence now available shows there was no margin for safety. The issue is not whether the estimate of 80,000 extra cancer plus leukemia deaths annually for the exposure of the entire population at 0.17 rad would have been exactly correct. The real point is that the expected numbers would have been in the tens of thousands, not near zero. Had this been appreciated and announced 15 years ago, this book was written in the late 90s, I think, nuclear electricity generation would have been more rationally evaluated in the light of realistic appraisal for the potential future hazard. The electric utility industry would not have been mistakenly lured into nuclear power by false and meaningless assurances of safety to humans in, quote, allowable, unquote, doses of radiation. Because there is no allowable dose of radiation, folks. It is truly pathetic to see how the misapplication of public health principles have deceived a major industry, including its executives, physicists, and engineers. The deep and widespread misinformation has led these physicists and engineers to design and install nuclear reactor systems under a delusion as to their true margin of safety. A real appreciation of the cancer leukemia hazard of radiation would doubtless have altered the outlook of the nuclear electricity industry. Whenever design and engineering are carried through with a false idea of margin of safety, and in this instance false by 100 to 1,000-fold, real danger lies ahead. So that is from Poison Power, folks, and I just randomly opened the book. This is a book people will embrace and ought to embrace. I strongly recommend you read this book. The title of this chapter is called Must We Hold Out for the Cold Corpses? Meaning, are we going to have to pile up the bodies in order to be... And evidently we are. We are, evidently. So let me see, what year was this book written? Oh my goodness, this is an original book. It's copyright 1971. Wow. Well, that message got drowned out, didn't it? Because we've got nuclear contamination all around us. And we are piling up the dead corpses. And now the birds are falling out of the sky. And the whales are washing up on the oceans. 2 whales washed up yesterday in San Francisco. That was very sad. Tim Martin sent me the story. It hurts people. You know, there's a lot of very sensitive people here on our planet. And it is really, I mean, our planet is filled with a bunch of callous people, but there are a very large amount of loving and caring people. And then when they realize, honestly, I think that anyone who really becomes alive about when we get the light goes on, when it clicks in your head about this nuclear contamination, when you begin to realize we literally have been sold down the river, like for real. They have had no regard for human life whatsoever. This whole idea of covering up, it's 100 to 1,000-fold much more dangerous. If that's just not 100 times, it's exponentially 100 to 1,000 times. It's 100 times or 1,000-fold. It's gigantic. The risk to human life because of these nuclear power plants is strong. It's very big, and it's very real, and we're not making it up. And it's all about, they have lied to an entire set of professionals. And we already know that we have an explosion in cancer. Everybody that we know gets cancer. Why is that? I mean, you can eat as right as you want, have the right attitude, and still you will be affected. Why is that? Because we are exposed to chemical and radioactive contamination at an untold amount. Even this article that talked about, the radioactive waste in Fukushima, he mentioned the meltdowns as if it had already stopped. the problem with those meltdowns is they have not stopped. They are in a complete China syndrome. They are still burning. That's why they can't find the core. It's burning out, God, they don't know where. It is so radioactive. They spend $30,000, $40,000 on a camera to go look at it that dies in 15 minutes. I mean, they are picking up the homeless from the streets of Tokyo, bringing them to go to work and offering them money and food and drugs, whatever they want. Then when they start getting sick, they square up with them and say, okay, you owe the company store so much, here's a few $100, you're on your way. And then they let them die in the streets, bleeding to death. I mean, these are real stories that are really happening. And unfortunately, Japan has a secrecy law where they're not allowed to talk about things. We're not getting accuracy in reporting, which is why I love this idea of coming back to Jeff, to Jeff Cohen coming to town. I'm looking for my glasses. Hold on. Because Jeff Cohen is not just a journalist. He actually runs a website, or I guess it's an organization, Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, FAIR. And I don't know if many of you know about it, but it is I had it and then I clicked out of it. I'm sorry. Accuracy in Reporting. There we go. He founded this, like, I guess 25 years ago. And this fair has been a really great organization because, well, I know what I do is I print out, they have like a media list. I went there and got a media list so that I have it on my desk. And I call the media and I tell them what I think. You know, I listen, that's why I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes, just to, you know, watch Fox News. And I do call Fox News. I'll go to my desk and rant like the other night. It was unbelievable. They were talking about the Palestinians being murdered and picked off, you know, sniped. And they were saying that Hamas was telling the Palestinians to get their guns and go attack Israel. And I'm like, what the hell? People don't understand. The Palestinians are not allowed to be armed, first off. They are living in an apartheid state. All their food, everything is decided what goes in, what goes out. There are over 600 checkpoints in Gaza. It is bombed the daylights out of. It is an absolute mess. 98% of the water in Palestine is bad. 98%. Israel is arresting children and basically tortures them, takes them into a room and intimidates them without their parents. It's beyond comprehension, and for these people on Fox to say that Hamas is asking people to get their weapons, it was upsetting. So I did call them in the middle of the night. But let's go back to FAIR, because about FAIR, let's take a look at what their mission statement is, because it's pretty awesome. It's an awesome organization. FAIR, the National Media Watch Group, has been offering well-documented criticism of media bias and censorship since 1986. We work to invigorate the First Amendment by advocating the greater diversity in the press and by scrutinizing media practices that marginalize public interest, minority, and dissenting viewpoints. As an anti-censorship organization, we expose neglected news stories and defend working journalists when they are muzzled. As a progressive group, FAIR believes the structural reform is ultimately needed to break up the dominant media conglomerates, establish independent public broadcasting, and promote strong, nonprofit sources of information. Uniquely, FAIR works with both activists and journalists. We maintain a regular dialogue with reporters at news outlets across the country, providing constructive critiques when called for and applauding exceptional, hard-hitting journalism. We also encourage the public to contact media with their concerns to become media activists rather than passive consumers of news. And that's what I do. That's exactly what I do. And so you can, they have the thing on here, there is something that says take action. Action alert, media advisory, activism update, email, sign up, Fair Media Activism Kit. Let's open that up. Fair Media Activism Kit. Let's open that in a new link. And then action alert. Let's see what that says. Activism alert. Oh, this is just stuff that's going on. They report articles. NewsHour treats ethnic cleansing in Myanmar as a matter of opinion. It's true. New York Times failed to note op-ed author's funder has $2 billion motive for attacking Argentina. Oops. Okay, let's look at their activism kit. Media's activism kit. What is it? Inside the kit, you will find how-to guides for identifying, documenting, and challenging inaccurate and unfair news coverage. Okay, so I guess there's a kit here that you have to download and look at. So I think I'll do that. So this is going to be exciting when Jeff Cohen comes, because I definitely want to talk to him about this business, about how is it that all of these so-called activists, no one's taking on this moniker of, it's not just climate change, it's radioactive contamination that is poisoning the entire planet. We have been bombarded since with the 50s from it, and maybe we've just had it. This is my thinking. Maybe we have had so much blast of radioactivity, and yet we're still able to live, so that people think that it's not that bad. It's just the slow drip of murder. You know what I mean? Like, they're not killing us quickly. Like, if there was an atomic bomb, there would be a lot of horrendous, horrible things that we would see immediately, right? But with this, it's like the water in Flint, Michigan. We don't see the children in Flint, Michigan becoming mentally retarded or slow or dense or, just weaker and sick all the time. We don't see that, so it doesn't feel real, right? Because it's just water, after all. I mean, Jenna Thrift has a show called Water is Life, and that is the truth. Water is life. And the water protectors, why they are not, although I think they are taking up the moniker of the uranium poisoning. So, I mean, one of the things I do want to talk to Mark Rabinowitz, who I hope will come on my radio show. He's the guy who had something about I.F. Stone. I hope that we'll talk about this business about the water and the uranium mining, because I think that we are ignoring the whole contamination just for pure greed, without regard. And maybe it is an extermination level event. And I don't mean... Well, I guess Tom Ackerman and I were talking about whether it's an extermination or an extinction level. I think they're attempting to exterminate humans, and in the meanwhile, they've opted and said that, okay, we'll have a certain extinction level event because we want to accomplish a certain task of reestablishing the world here again. It's the only thing I can think of. I know that's kind of a wild-haired idea, but I can't figure out how every government can just choose to ignore the harm caused by nuclear contamination. So, well, look, we have got a minute left here, and I want to thank everybody for joining us and listening to my radio show this morning. And I want to thank KEPW.org, 97.3 in Eugene, Oregon, for playing our radio show. And I am very excited. I hope that we will see people at these events, at the Jeff Cohen events this week. Wednesday, May 23rd, a meet and greet at Cafe Soraya from 5 to 7. Thursday, May 24th at 6 p.m. in Circle Films, All Governments Lie at the Bijou Theater. May 28th, join us at Mozzi's at the Italian restaurant here in town. They will give us 30% of your meal. So there's 3 events where you can engage with Jeff Cohen if you live in the Northwest. I encourage everybody to put your courage feet on. That means take action even when you don't feel like it. Thank you for joining us. We will talk to everyone tomorrow. And peace out, you guys. Talk to you later.